This is the MHFi podcast with Carl Jensen and Doug Cunnington. We have authentic conversations about the journey to Fi, health, happiness, and some very odd tangents. We interview Fi experts, side hustlers, people on their way to Fi, and those who have reached the other side. Join us every week, and if you want the show notes and links and all that other stuff, head over to MileHighFi.com.
Hello, world. Welcome to the Mile High Fi podcast. I'm Carl Jensen with my co-host.
I'm Doug Cunnington.
And we have a very special guest today. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi there. My name is Maya Corbic. I'm a CPA, and I help parents teach kids about money.
That's awesome. And I hear you recently went on an epic trip and got to ride on some exotic animals. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, so my family, we love to travel. And of course, after 2 years of pandemic, we were itching to travel. And one of the destinations that we had on our bucket list was Egypt. And that was really exciting. But another thing that was on my bucket list was riding a camel, which did not turn out to be the way I thought it was going to be. It was actually quite scary. They are very tall animals. And, when you're up there, when I was up there, I was holding on for dear life. Like I was squeezing my legs, like holding on tight. And it was really funny because my kids were having the time of their lives. Arms, legs flying, they're like, Mom, relax. And I'm like, I cannot. And my son was, it was funny because he's like, Mom, you look like a stick. You're standing up, you're sitting up so straight. And he's like, you just have to like ride with the camel. It's like a wave. And it was just really, really funny. I didn't expect it to be like that, but I can check it off my bucket list now. I've done camel riding.
Interesting.
Was it the camel with two humps and you sit between them, or how does this work?
It was a single hump camel. So you're kind of on top of the hump. And it was, what freaked me out was that the harness, it's like there was nothing for you to hold on to except the front. There's like a little thing in the front. That's it. So you really kind of had to stay up. But I guess the key is to relax. When they say even in life, like when certain things are happening, you're just supposed to go with the flow. And I'm not the one that goes with the flow. I like to control things, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask about the two hump deal. But yeah, I guess with the two humps, it seems like you're maybe a little more steady in there.
It's pretty scary when you sit down and they tell you to actually lean back, because when the camel gets up, you can really roll forward, or when it's coming down, it's like you really have to kind of lean back so that you don't roll forward and fall off of it.
Got it.
So did you go around a pyramid, or what did you do around the camel?
They had these different packages. Thank God we only did 15 minutes. The kids wanted to go for longer, but you could go for 15 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours. We even had friends that ended up going to a different town on camels. I think I would die. They would have to, strap me to a camel or something. I don't know. But yeah, 15 minutes was just enough for me.
Wow. Doug, what is the most exotic animal you have ever ridden on top of?
You know what? Probably just a horse. I don't ride on very many animals usually, so probably just a horse, which isn't that exotic. How about you?
Yeah, I think a horse is probably as good as it gets. I might have been on an elephant at some point, but maybe as a very small child.
Oh yeah, maybe. I think there's a picture of me on an elephant, but yeah, I think it was like 2 or something, so I don't remember at all. One thing we didn't mention, people might hear background noise. We're at FinCon right now, and Maya and I met at FinCon last year in Austin. So was that your first FinCon?
That was my first FinCon, yeah. And you were my mentor.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we
were signed
met
up.
And we chatted some. Did you get anything out of the mentoring relationship?
I did, but it was mostly about, I think for me, it was just mostly that you introduced me to so many people who, since then, I actually call friends, and I follow them on different social media platforms. I've learned so much from them, so I really appreciate that. It's like you put me in touch with all these cool content creators. So,
awesome.
Yeah, it's been great.
Good. Yeah, and FinCon's pretty fun. I don't know how to limit my fun, so that's why my voice sounds the way it does. It's just rough. But FinCon's pretty awesome. You came back, and it's good to see you. So I think we could kind of ramp into it.
Yeah, let's do it. Today we are going to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, and that is kids and money and how to teach kids about money, because that is what you do, Maya. But before we get into that, Where are you from and what's your educational background?
So I'm originally from Bosnia. I immigrated when I was 15 years old with my parents and my brother. 2 suitcases and $50. We lost everything in Bosnian War. But that was actually, a blessing in disguise because we lived in shelters and government housing and whatnot. And it really helped me get this perspective on, money and how you can actually still live a decent life even when you don't have much money, but you have opportunities to, acquire a better life. So I actually ended up becoming a CPA, and I worked for some of the big public companies. I was a CFO, I was a tax accountant, and eventually I ended up teaching kids about money and helping parents teach kids about money. So for the past 10 years, that's what I've been doing.
So how long were you in the corporate grind, I guess?
I was in the corporate grind for about 10 years. 2 years in a smaller public accounting firm, and then 8 years in the bigger, one of the top 4 accounting firms. I was doing audit, and then I thought it was going to be better if I switched to tax. And it wasn't. It was not better. But I learned a lot. I acquired lots of skills. I met some incredibly talented people. And it just, you gain these skills that I'm definitely using now. And I find them very helpful being an entrepreneur. So, yeah, that was that. And then after that, I ended up as a CFO of a private school. So I did that for 6 years. But that was different because it was on my terms. It was part-time. It was a contract position. I was not an employee, and I could make up my own hours, so I can pick up my kids from school or drop them off to school, go to all the assemblies or field trips or whatnot. So yeah, it kind of worked.
So, and how did you transition from that to what you do currently?
So actually, what happened was when I was in the public accounting, my husband and I was about 32 years old, and we paid off all of our debt, all of our mortgage. We were debt free, and it was one of those moments where I had 2 small kids. My son was 4, my daughter was 2. I was not spending much time with them. The work-life balance was not good. And it kind of hit me. I realized I really don't need to be doing this anymore. We're financially free. I was just kind of going along because, when you're in that setting and you're working these insane hours, you don't even have time to look outside and realize, okay, what should this life be all about? And, what's normal out there? Because this seemed normal. Everybody, all my friends, all my coworkers, everybody was doing the same thing. So it just kind of hit me one day and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And thankfully I could quit. And so I did without any plans of what I wanted to do. And people thought I was crazy because they're like, well, you have nothing lined up. And I'm like, I know, but this is what I like. Staying here is not an option. So I had some time to kind of really think about what I want to do, and I spent more time with my kids. And then I realized that my kids knew nothing about money. My son was 4, and he was at the point in time where he started to ask us to buy him things. Or I remember clearly one time he told me he did not like the car I was driving, and he thought I should get a nicer car. And then we had this conversation about how much cars cost. And I realized that, he had no idea about money. So I looked into our education system, and I wanted to know what it is that they're going to learn in school. And I realized at that time, this is 10 years ago, or a little more than 10 years ago, they weren't going to learn much. Now things have changed for better. Things are still improving. But that sort of prompted me to start doing what I'm doing. I started teaching my own kids and other people's kids. I started going to schools. I was doing lots of school workshops prior to COVID. I even did workshops for parents, through PTA in the evenings. And then COVID hit, so now I'm mostly online, which works as well. Yeah.
And before we go on, so you realized that you could stop working. Were you following the financial independence movement, or you did the math?
No, I didn't. I didn't
right?
really know. Yeah, I did the math, and I think there's that immigrant thing. I think it was because I was brought up in such, I guess, poor environment. I just learned to get by with very little. So we got by on very little, my husband and I. When your expenses are low, you can pay off your debt quicker. We had some debt. We had $60,000 of debt. It was so funny. My $30,000 was my student loans and a car that I had to get because I was an accountant. It was conditioned for my job. I had to go to different locations. But my husband had $30,000 of a party debt, and he's okay with me saying that. So it was funny, but I mean, it was not funny at the time. I mean, once we paid that off, and we were really determined to pay off our mortgage and just be debt free. And I was an accountant, so it was kind of logical.
Sure.
But it was much later on that I stumbled upon the FI community. I didn't even know there was a movement for that, and I thought it was incredible.
Right. And you mentioned people thought you were crazy because you didn't have anything lined up. Maybe they thought you were going to take a sabbatical and find something
Well,
later.
that's what they did. Yeah, like the public accounting firm that I was with, they were like, you know what, why don't you just take a year off? Keep the computer, keep all the equipment that we gave you, and in a year tell us if you want to go back. And if I may share this one thing that made me realize I do not want to go back. So obviously the hours that we were working, it wasn't like 9 to 5, it was like 5 to 9 or like longer. And we had this office communicator. It's kind of like a messenger, and besides everybody's name, there's like a green dot if they're working. And because they gave me the laptop to keep for that year, I remember one night, my husband and I were really tired, and I was like, you know what, let's just watch some Netflix in bed. We didn't have a TV in our bedroom, so I said, I'll just grab my laptop. We'll pull up Netflix on my laptop. And I remember opening my laptop. It was 10 o'clock at night. We're in bed. The kids are in bed. And I open up the laptop and I look at that office communicator, and there are all these green dots. All my coworkers, all my friends, everybody's still working. And I'm in bed. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going back. There's no way. I mean, those coworkers are amazing people. I learned a lot, but there has to be work-life balance for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Doug, did you ever want to climb the corporate ladder like that? I'm guessing that's why people do that, because they want to get to a place in management or become a partner in the firm or whatever. Did you have any desire? I know the answer to this already. Yeah. I just want to hear you say it again.
Yeah, I did a little bit in the beginning, because you get to a company, you go through orientation, especially when you're young, and you're trying to follow along, and you drink the Kool-Aid, and they're indoctrinating you to the thing. So I was like, yeah, a couple years doing this, and then maybe you can get promoted, and a few more years of that. But once I got to sort of the middle management, we had a similar communicator where it would show if you were online. I would actually, if you keep moving your mouse.
Oh, so maybe, did you have the software for it?
I did, yeah. It's auto mouse mover, and you just move it like one pixel over, so it looks like, oh man, Doug's such a hard worker. And Carl knows this, but on Outlook, you can schedule emails to go out. So I would schedule emails, and it would look like I'm working really late. And yeah, so I took advantage of what they wanted to see, and then made it look like that.
Nice. I have to say, in public accounting, it's impossible to do that. And I'll just tell you quickly why. Because we bill for our hours, same as lawyers do. And then if you bill for too many hours, then they ask you, well, this was the budget. Why did you spend so much more time? And you can't even make up the time, because every week on Mondays, they used to have this thing that they would send to us, and it was basically a schedule of people's utilization, how they're utilizing their time. So they were kind of pitting people against each other, because you can see everybody's utilization, and the person that had the lowest, everybody would look at them, give them stern looks, and it's like, what are you doing, Yeah. But yeah.
Yep, and I guess I never worked at an accounting place, so I found a good spot where I could slip through the cracks and no one knew.
Nice.
Yeah, I did my work mostly, so it was fun. Okay.
I'd like to back up a second with you, Maya. You said something at the start. You said your background gave you perspective on money, but I think we have a mutual friend, and please tell me if I'm messing up her name, but Mahila?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Mahila actually came to Canada the same time as we were family friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's amazing. I just saw her husband Mark walk by 2 minutes ago.
Right.
But I don't want to get too deep into this, because I'm sure this is rough. But she told me some of the horrors of the war there. I think she said that in her village, maybe 1 out of 4 people died, was shot by snipers. So I mean, you didn't get a perspective on money. You got a perspective on life.
Yes.
You were getting away to save your life. Okay, I'm not sure where I was going to go with that, but I just. But
I do know her. I mean, she came to Canada, I think, literally either the same day or maybe a few days later. And we hung out. We were family friends, yeah.
Yeah? Do you still talk?
Sometimes when we see each other, yes. But
Okay.
we kind of lost touch because she's in the U.S. now and I'm in Canada. But yeah, I
Okay.
see Mark. I spent some time with Mark
Okay.
at the conference.
It's a small world. It's amazing
Yes.
that I know you two separately and then you know each other. But,
Right.
Okay. So how did you started teaching your kids about money, you realized they weren't being taught in school, and then you eventually created an online presence around this. So how do you teach kids about money online?
So now what I've been trying to do for the last couple of years is really convert the materials and the workshops that I teach in person to online. So I do have some online live workshops. So every season, like right now, I actually have opened up enrollment for the fall workshops for kids, and then I also have fall workshops for teens. It's like series of different sessions that teach them about different things like investing, like credit score, proper management of debt, budgeting, and so on. I've also done the same thing for parents. And then I've also created some of these courses just to kind of sit online on my website so people can purchase them. But it's definitely a different experience. I personally prefer to teach in person because I can engage my audience. I feel the energy. The energy is really important, I think, when you're teaching. Whereas online it's nice. I'm home with my kids. I don't have to travel. I can finish my class and I can go downstairs and have dinner with them. I kind of miss teaching in person a little bit.
And I'm curious, so my wife and I have volunteered to teach at our school, and we've always been turned down, and I'm not sure what the reason is. But one issue, I think, with teaching kids about money is, how do you teach kids about money when the parents aren't even doing it right? One of the school officials we pose this to drives this very, very expensive vehicle, like a $100,000 pickup truck, to the school parking lot, and maybe he does ranching or something else with it, but I don't think he actually does. So I'm trying not to be too judgmental, but him and some of these other parents I see might not be doing the right things about money. So how do you give the kids this message when the role model that they have most often in their life might not be the best money role model?
Yeah, I think that's very difficult. And I've come to realize over the past 10 years, not everybody cares about financial literacy, and you really cannot help people that don't want to be helped. And unfortunately, those kids will fall through the cracks because our education system is not picking this up, and the parents are not doing it. And I feel that those kids will have to learn this on their own, but that's only if they come across for example, some of these financial influencers online, or if they hear of FI, but on their own, a lot of times the kids that grow up in an environment like that where the parents are overspending money, they don't clue in that this is not a typical way to live. To them, having debt is normal. To them, changing cars every 2 years and driving the latest and the greatest is normal. Because this is how they've been raised. That's their baseline.
Sure. Yeah, I had a follow-up question, which I cannot remember. Yeah, do you think, and you mentioned things have changed in the schools there. One interesting thing about our school, at least, is one of the reasons they said we couldn't go teach them about money is they said that's not a part of their curriculum. They're like, we're a math and science academy. We're not going to include anything about money or personal finance in our curriculum. Is it different in Canada?
It's not different. It's actually very difficult to get into schools. I've tried so hard, and to be honest with you, I am grateful for this ability to do this online now, because it's no longer up to schools to let me come inside and teach this. Because many of them wouldn't. It was like the doors were just shutting in my face all the time. And I remember thinking, I was like, why am I even doing this? But, it's like, I don't know. I care about it. I truly, passionately care about it. I want to teach as many people as possible, because I think if we can teach the younger generations, hopefully they can have a better life. We can have better society. But schools are very particular. In Canada, you have to apply to be a vendor. And that process is ridiculous. Like, I've gone through it. I don't want to bore you with it. It is just extremely difficult. And even though, like, I've been to some of the schools, but some school boards are still like, oh, we even though you've taught and, people want you to come back, the teachers, the parents, whatever, they're like, we still want you to become a vendor, yet they won't give you a vendor license. There's a lot of red tape. I personally don't understand it. I think that some schools also have other priorities. I think a lot of them are focusing on, I know that a lot of them had a focus on like healthy eating and like preventing bullying and, which are all worthy causes. So they sort of have to, I guess, maybe pick and choose who they want to bring into their schools.
Sure. For the ones that you were able to get into, like, what made them accept you? Did they just have the extra bandwidth, or someone had an interest personally?
So the very first one, actually, it was just a friend of a friend that I met. He was a principal at the school, and that was in 2013. It was my very first one, and it was kind of crazy because I ended up teaching the whole school all the way from grade 1 to, I believe it was grade 6. It took me a week and a half to teach every single class, and I obviously had to change the lessons to make them age appropriate. So that was a friend. Some people ended up just finding me online, some teachers, and they would bring me in, sort of sneak me in, really, because they were not supposed to be doing that. Like, I would have to go to, again, like, I would have to apply to be a vendor and do it properly. But when I did that, and again, maybe we shouldn't be getting into this. It's a long process. Maybe we can talk about it afterwards. But yeah, it's lots of red tape.
That's hilarious, the sneaking you in. I'm picturing like the opposite of a prison movie where the person is in the laundry cart, you're on the food cart or something underneath. And, okay, this person's going to talk about money for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
And the kids were interested. The kids love this kind of stuff, A lot of times, and sometimes people comment on my Instagram, they're like, well, let the kids be kids. But kids want to learn about money.
Sure.
How many little kids pretend, they're paying for something with like a pretend card, or they're grocery shopping, and kids want to learn about money. It makes them feel grown up.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I wonder, because I know, Carl, like you said, you tried to get in there, but maybe you could try to pitch again, maybe talk directly to the teacher, maybe dress up, wear a collared shirt or something.
Yeah. Well, the other thing a collared shirt, I don't know. That's too far, Doug. The interesting thing is
look presentable.
Pants? Oh, God, I don't know if I even own any of those. I'm not even sure what those are anymore. But some interesting thing was some of the teachers have actually found out who we are, mostly through Mindy's podcast, because that's pretty big, Bigger Pockets Money. And they want to talk to us on a personal level, but we can't go into their classroom. That's happened multiple times. But
really?
We could talk to the teachers, but we can't talk to the kids. But I like to think maybe those teachers are turning around and teaching the kids something.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, we have some nice questions here we can get into. So what's the biggest mistake parents make?
I think the biggest mistake parents make, like in terms of teaching kids money, or... Yeah, I guess that's what we're talking about, right? I think, personally, a lot of times people think that, if I just give my child some money, they automatically know what to do with it. And that's not the case. We really have to take the time to teach them what they have to do with that money. So, for example, if we give allowance, it's not just, here's some allowance and go run with it. It's kind of like, okay, this is allowance, this is the money coming in. Let's teach you pay yourself first principle. So, which means that take a portion of that allowance, put it into savings account, and then the rest of it, perhaps they can allocate to either spending or donating. And then with time, when they keep saving a certain amount of allowance, that amount is going to accumulate. Hey, let's teach you how to invest that. And it's not just giving the money, it's all these lessons that come with the money. Because a lot of parents tell me, well, I give allowance, but it's like, okay, but why? What do you do with it? What's the purpose?
Okay, and this next question comes from me, but I'd like to tell you a quick story before that. I have two kids, they're only 2 years apart, but they're so different. And I remember with our older kid, we would make them earn money, they would have an allowance, and then they could spend the money. We would try to encourage them to save it. But with our older one, we would go to a store, and the kid would be like, okay, I'm going to buy this. So I would go to her, I'm like, okay, you can buy this, but if you spend that $10, it's going to be gone. And you're going to have to do all that work again to earn it, unloading the dishwasher and all these chores that we have you do. And she would sit there and think about it. And then she would always decide, okay, Dad, I think you're right. I'm going to save it. Our other one, I give the same talk to, and she's like, okay, it's in the cart. I'm buying it. I don't care. So my question was, is there a one-size-all solution? How do you even go about teaching this skill to so many diverse personalities, I guess?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So there is no one size fit all. There are actually few things that families, in my opinion, need to do. Like, I've developed this framework after so many years of teaching this and talking to so many different parents and seeing what works, what doesn't. So number one thing is really all the parents, I think all the families need to figure out what are their family values. What is it that they care about? Because we all have different values. We all parent differently. So teaching kids about money is also different from family to family. And there is no right way of doing it. The second thing is what you just talked about. It's the children's money personalities. So we're all born with different money personalities. There's a great book out there by Jolene Godfrey. She is, in my opinion, pioneer of financial literacy for kids. When I started teaching my kids about money, there was not much material out there. Now there's quite a lot. So some 10 years ago, that was the only book that I was able to find on Amazon that was teaching kids about money. And then there was another one from CPA Canada. But Jolene actually discusses that there are 7 different money personalities that we're all born with. And you can probably think of maybe, let's say, you and your sibling. You were raised by the same parents, but you have different money personalities. And so it's very common to have 2 kids. Like, I've got kids, and now they're money personalities. We've sort of altered them, I guess, as parents. Yeah. But originally, I had a saver and a spender. And I'll give you an example. So just to kind of tie all this in. So our family values, and again, this is just for us and for everybody else, it could be different, is to have a balanced money approach, meaning that, as long as we pay our bills and we put some money aside for retirement or whatever, the rest of the money, and let's say we donate to charity, the rest of the money is there for us to have fun and enjoy life. And I think for me, coming from Bosnia and Bosnian War, I think that's really important to me, to enjoy life. Like, that is huge. So my saver, yeah, it's great. He would save all his money. He would not want to spend any of his money. But I wanted to teach him that it's okay to spend money. It's okay to spend money on things that we enjoy, as long as he's responsible. And my little spender, my gosh, like, money would burn a hole in her pocket. She wanted to spend every single little penny. And she would even give money to her friends when they would come over for play dates. So I had parents call me after play dates. They're like, my kid came home with this money. Should we be returning this? And I'm like, no, keep it, because she needs to learn a lesson that next time we go to Toys R Us or another store, she has no money to spend because she gave it away. And it was kind of like, okay, why is she doing that? Is she want to be liked? Like, you kind of get into all of that. But with her, we also, it's like, if you think of this, I guess, teaching kids money, and like, they're both on different ends of the spectrum. We as family, my husband and I, we had to kind of bring them to the middle. We had to teach my little spender that, okay, you have to save your money. And there's, also, like, when you want to spend your money, maybe you can look at like coupons and like spend less. So she is so much better now. I'm actually really proud of her. And also with my son, he's gotten better. I mean, it's so funny. Like, he's a teenager now, and he's like, yeah, I don't need much. He's very low key, and that's just his personality. But my goal is to make sure that he knows it's okay to spend money and enjoy life.
Cool.
And what was your money personality? What is?
When my money personality when I was a kid, oh gosh, I was a spender. Okay. I think the money was burning a hole in my pocket. But then I think as I got older, there's a money personality. Gosh, I forget what Jolene Godfrey calls it, but it's people who we're not cheap. I guess we're frugal. There's a little bit of a difference. It's like I actually take pleasure in spending less on something, but delivering more value out of it. So I don't mind spending money, but I try to extract as much value as possible out of the experience or out of the thing that I buy. So for example, our trip to Egypt, we spent, and I know this is a lot of money for some people, so I kind of sometimes don't even like talking about this, but we spent $7,000. Now, that trip would have been about $20,000 for the whole family for what we experienced, but we used our points to book the travel. We negotiated. We had like a lot of other things that we did to bring down the price. So we got all this crazy value, but for a lot less than what normal price would be. So I think that's sort of my money personality shifted.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you haven't read the book, have you?
I have not.
I haven't either. But I think I kind of fall into that, like, I'm not afraid to spend, I'm happy to save, I want to get a lot of value, like, I'm probably in that same area.
I think my thing is, like, I think my biggest pet peeve is, like, when I think I'm going to get value out of something, and let's say there are some circumstances where you cannot negotiate or you cannot get a deal, right? Like, you're just like, okay, you know what? This is worth it. I'll pay the full price. My biggest pet peeve is when I don't get the value that I thought I was going to get. So I don't know. I guess that's my money personality.
Yeah, that makes sense. Carl, do you have any guesses of what you might be without knowing anything about the book or the other 7 types? Do you think you're a spender, saver, or the whatever you just described?
Yeah, there are actually people also, sorry, Carl, I'm just going to mention another personality. There are also people who don't care about money at all. They don't want to talk about it. It doesn't interest them. So it's actually very difficult for parents of these children to engage them to even learn about money. They want nothing to do with it. Money doesn't exist in their world.
Yeah, I guess to answer your question, Doug, I think I've always been a person that cares about efficiency. I like to do everything at the best way possible. I remember as a kid, I would think about driving and, we should organize our trips this way. And I still do it to minimize left turns and to go like clockwise, so we don't have to make left turns. We can make right turns, leave at a certain time of day.
Yeah.
I can I would love that job, like designing the logistics for the trucks. But I would say I was a born saver because I found more joy in saving money and investing it and hustling than spending it. I have 2 younger sisters, and they had a name for me. They would call me Mr. Cheapo because they'd be like, "You've got this money and you want this radio, you should just buy it." And I'd be like, "Well, I don't know. I think I'm just gonna save it." And they're the opposite. And one of them is pretty close in age to me, and she was more likely to spend money versus saving it. And I think you're absolutely right. There's argument that rages in the FI community every once in a while. I remember someone tweeted, "There's no such thing as a born saver." I'm like, well, I don't know if that's the way to put it, but there's some conservativeness in my personality that makes me more likely to save money. And it's not just about money. I realize that it's about other things. But I agree with you in this book with the 7 different types. I really do believe we are born with a certain type, a certain disposition to how we manage money.
Yeah, and I think you sound exactly like my son. What you just described, that's my son's personality, and he's always been this way. And I find that really interesting. And another money personality, I'm just going to mention, it's a hustler. So these are the kids that will find a deal in every situation. But with these kind of kids, you have to guide their moral compass. Because, they're hustlers. They'll figure out, I can make a deal out of this. But sometimes it could be illegal, right? So you have to help them navigate that. And I think my husband is more of that personality, right? Yeah. So when he tells me some things he did as a child, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I wouldn't have even thought of doing it. But, some of it you have to be very careful with.
Yeah. Hey, Doug, you were a bit of a hustler you had a lawn care business when you were in high school, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hustling, and I didn't do anything illegal that I know of. But yeah, I got out there, and I'm not afraid to work.
Yeah, we had when I was a CFO of a private school, so it was so funny because I had a team of accountants, bookkeepers, and one lady came to me and she's like, "You will not believe what happened." I said, "Well, what happened?" So we had this cafeteria, and they had this amazing deal for kids that the parents would actually prepay for, but the kid would get an appetizer, main course, a dessert, a drink, and I believe there was something else. So 5 different things. It was just way too much food for one child to consume. So apparently there was this black market happening in the cafeteria where these kids were selling to their friends and making money on the side. And I remember my coworker being so upset about it, and I was like, this is genius. I'm like, we need to steer these kids in the right direction. I'm like, these are future entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
that's so good.
And now that you're mentioning that, I'm pretty sure I did sell some of my lunch or have deals like that. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's a long time ago. Well, I do know we have a limited amount of time, so we should keep pushing through here. Carl, I think this one's yours. Many adults suck with money. So what hope is there for their children, Maya? What do you think? I'm sure you've run into that.
Yes,
especially in
100%.
person. Yeah.
I think, yes, many of them do suck with money, but I think if they realize they suck with money and they can start educating themselves, then yes, there is hope. But if they don't understand or they don't care, some of them simply do not care. I feel bad for those kids, honestly, because again, our education system is not picking this up. These children will fall through the cracks. I think that hopefully, I think financial literacy is being introduced into schools more. So hopefully these kids will learn. But yeah, I mean, somebody has to advocate for these kids, and I don't know how we get through to them without parents who are interested or the school that's interested.
Yeah. It's tough.
Okay, so here's a question. A parent comes up to you and says, hey, I know who you are. I don't know anything about money. Can you give me 3 quick and dirty tips about how I can teach my kids about money?
So I would say number one is, Number one is figure out your own money mindset. Because besides the money personality, we all have different money mindsets that depend on the environment that we grew up in. So things we heard about money from our parents, our teachers, social media, whatever, TV. Things we emotionally experienced when it comes to money, whether that's, we were upset about certain incidents or maybe happy or who knows. And then just understand what is our own money mindset before we start teaching our kids, because we can pass down some some negativity around money, like for example, or like limited beliefs, like that money is limited, and it's really hard to come by. Whereas in this FI community, we all know that there are different ways that you can do side hustles or you can make money. Kind of like the sky is the limit as long as you keep pushing. So that would be number one, just making sure that our mindset is right before we start teaching our kids. The second one I would say is allowance. There are 4 different ways to do allowance. There's no right or wrong. But the idea behind it is really to shift the purchasing responsibility from you onto them so that they can make mistakes when dollar values are low and stakes are not high. So they can learn from those mistakes when they're younger rather than like when they have a 6-figure salary. And the third thing I would say, if there's another parent involved or a guardian, just make sure that you're on the same page. So you're teaching the same concepts, the same values. Because it's really difficult when, parents are not on the same page. It's like parenting, right? Like they can turn one parent against another. So I think that's really important.
Awesome.
Perfect. And we have a couple more to go here, but before we start wrapping, so you create on Instagram, right? That's your main platform. So was that challenging getting started? Social media can be a bit of a grind. Not everybody loves what everyone's doing. So yeah, can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's very challenging. I mean, my account has blown up in the last little while, but it took me 2 years to get there. And I find that it is very challenging because sadly, what I have noticed through the comments and direct messages that people have been sending, a lot of people are looking for that get rich quickly kind of scheme, or how can I make my kid rich, or how can I invest, or what do I invest? The best question is like a fully loaded question. It's like, what do I invest in? And it's like, well, there are so many moving parts and layers in order to answer that. So I feel like it is really challenging because I want to deliver value and the depth and the breadth of the content. But I feel like a lot of people may not necessarily be interested because today's attention span of people that are on social media is very short. Everybody just wants like a 5 or 10 second video that tells you how to get wealthy.
Right. Yeah. Have you had anything go viral?
Pardon me?
Have you had anything go viral of your
posts? I had, oh my gosh, yes. So some videos, it's so funny because with Instagram, you never know what's going to hit. Some videos that I've done where I'm like, okay, this really is important. Everybody should know this. They barely get any views. And then something that I filmed literally in the parking lot while waiting for my daughter to finish one of her activities. And just by fluke, there happened to be a Porsche behind me. One of those reels just blew up. It was like so weird. But yeah, you never know.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun though.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I have fun with it.
Cool. All right, what does a perfect day look like for you?
A perfect day is actually a balance of spending some time just by myself, working out, meditating, reading, then spending time with my family and friends, like getting those connections, like quality time with them. And I love what I do. I really love what I do, and I love working and creating content and teaching. I just get a kick out of it. So if I could just balance all of those three things, that would be a perfect day.
Very cool.
Nice. And where can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram. I'm under the name of teach.kids.money. There are some impersonators out there, unfortunately, so just make sure you're following the right account. And I also have Wealthy Kids Investment Club. That's my membership club that teaches families how to successfully invest. So the link for that is wealthykids.club, not .com, .club, so wealthykids.club.
Cool. And we'll link up to that. Who's the target age or the target group for the course? Or
yeah, so I have different courses as well. That's on my website, but and you can find that through Instagram. So the two workshops are for kids and for teenagers. For kids, it's from ages 8 to 12, and then teenagers ages 13 to 18. The Wealthy Kids Investment Club is for families. So so when we talked about parents that don't know what they're doing or whatever, it's also for those parents as well as for their children. They can go through the content on their together or separately. Sometimes I have parents of toddlers that are going through the content on their own because they want to create better future for their kids.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, we'll link up to your Instagram and the course and anywhere else you need us to. So thanks,
Perfect.
Maya. This has been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you
you
guys
so
for
much.
having me. This has been great.
Thanks for listening to the show. That was the Mile High Five podcast, and I'm Doug Cunnington, the balder host, and Carl Jensen is the cool, sexy one. If you dig the show, please do 3 things for us. Number 1, tell a friend, a family member, an enemy about the show. We really don't care who you tell. Maybe forward them a specific show that you know that they will like. It's the single most helpful thing that you can do to spread the word. It's like giving us a virtual high five, and actually we don't give high fives in person, so the virtual kind's pretty good. And more importantly, your friend or family member or even your enemy will appreciate the fact that you were thinking of them. Number 2, make sure you're following or subscribed on your podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, whatever you're using, and that way you won't miss a show. And number 3, please leave us a rating and review. We read them on the show occasionally, and you might hear yours out there on an upcoming episode. Quick disclaimer, this show is not financial or legal advice. I'd actually be surprised if it sounded like it. It's really just for entertainment, and that's at least what we're hoping for. But seriously, get advice from professionals. Carl and I are just 2 guys with microphones that sit in my basement and talk. So we'll catch y'all next week.
Are we still doing a sound check?
Sure, we could do one now. Yeah, we could do one real quick. So, Maya, what have you been up to this week? This is a sound check that we'll play at the end of the episode. So, Maya, what have you been up to this week?
Well, I've been here at FinCon connecting with all these wonderful financial literacy creators and just enjoying my time here. Yeah.
And then have you been to Florida before?
Once.
Okay.
Oh no, actually twice. Yes.
Okay.
But this is exciting because I came here with my family.
Sure.
So we spent some time visiting the Keys and different parts of Florida. It's been fun.
Awesome. Very cool. And then, Carl, how do you like Florida?
I do not. God, I got to be careful what I say. I'm going to have people from Florida sending me hate mail. It's very humid here and it rains. So Doug, I know we've been trying to go in the pool in the lazy river like every afternoon, but then there's rain and thunder like every afternoon. So our plans are foiled. Maybe it's just like that this week and not usually like that, but I think it is usually like that.
I think so. Yeah, my dream. I like water parks and stuff, and literally I put on my trunks like 3 days in a row, and I'm walking down, I have a towel, smiling, and then boom, thunder hits, and they shut the whole pool down, and it rains for like a few hours. Thunder, it's been nuts.
Yeah. I only
So-
did it for like 10 minutes with my kids because we came here before the conference, and the kids were begging me. They're like, let's do it. And I was doing some work. And anyway, in the end, I ended up going to the lazy river and whatnot, but we only did it for 10 or 15 minutes. And same thing, there was lightning and thunder. They had to clear everything out.
Yeah, so fingers crossed today we may be able to get out there. Then I was going to maybe try to go early in the morning, but I stayed up too late last night. So you were smart. You went to bed early. Did you party last night or?
We just went to that, what is it, the Pro Mixer?
Okay.
And then we ended up going for dinner with some friends, and that was it.
Way
So-
smarter. I got to shut down earlier.
What
tonight.
did you do? Where did you go?
Yeah. So there were a couple like private parties upstairs with open bars. So somehow I found my way into those, and then it was very late. Like I actually stayed until they shut down the lobby bar, and then told us we couldn't even sit there anymore. Like yeah, it was way too late.
What time was that at, Doug?
It was about 3.
Holy cow. No wonder why you sound like you do today.
Yeah, no, it was a bad move. But I'm running on caffeine and adrenaline right now, and I'm going to crash in a little while. So, all right, we better get started.